Welcome to the ASA podcast, where we focus on subcontractors, the construction industry, and the issues and people making an impact. The ASA podcast is brought to you by the American Subcontractors Association and the Foundation of the American Subcontractors Association. Welcome to another episode of the ASA podcast. I'm your host, Mike Kline, and with me today is Mark McCallum. Mark is the CEO of the National Association of Surety Bond Producers, or NASBP. NASBP is an alliance partner with ASA and a longtime collaborator on subcontractor issues. Welcome, Mark. Thanks for joining me. Before we kick off, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, Mike, thanks for inviting me. It really is a pleasure to be here. Actually, I've been in the trade association space for a large part of my career. I actually started out in the general counsel's office at the American Institutes of Architects, and part of my portfolio was dealing with the AIA, contract and bond forms, as well as liability issues for architects. After that, I jumped over to the Associated General Contractors of America and was a counsel there and ran their contract documents program and had oversight over the building division and also some liability issues that they addressed at AGC, and was fortunate enough to be invited to come to NASBP as their first in-house general counsel. And I have been at NASBP for over 18 years, 3 or 4 of which was as a general counsel, and then I had the opportunity to become the CEO. So I like to say I am making my way around the construction industry so I can appreciate everybody's viewpoints, but I really do believe that it has helped me understand the different perspectives and the different interests that need to be addressed in a complex and very vibrant industry such as construction.
Yeah, absolutely. So how long has ASA and NASBP been collaborators?
So, I think that's a great story because really NASBP has worked with ASA even from my earliest days at NASBP. There always has been and continues to be a lot of common interest in a whole host of issues that benefit the construction industry and in particular the subcontractor community. Certainly, surety professionals have a decided interest in an equitable risk environment. And so we've worked historically with ASA over the years on many things, everything from equitable subcontracts to legislative issues at state and local levels, as well as educational efforts for all the different stakeholders out there, so that subcontractors really have a better risk environment, than they otherwise would, when people really don't understand construction. So that has been a very enjoyable part of my career. And I'm really glad to see that the relationship continues to blossom, where both groups are really striving to better the construction industry environment for their own members as well as stakeholders.
Explain to us a little bit about NASBP and its members, just to lay some foundations so our listeners understand.
Yeah, thank you. So NASBP has been in existence since 1942. We are a trade association for surety agencies. We had a start really during World War II when there was an effort underway to cut commissions by surety agents, and that banded together a number of surety agencies to create NASBP. So we had an advocacy bent from day one as a trade association, and we continue that to the present day. But our main members are surety agencies all across the country. We actually are an international organization. So not only do we have members throughout the US, but we have members in Canada and certain other countries around the world. And then we also have what we call affiliate members. and those are the surety companies themselves. So we have a number of prominent surety companies that engage in NASBP as well. And then we have an associates category, and those are service providers, predominantly construction-oriented CPA firms. But we have other firms like tech firms and claims consultants and others who also take part in the NASBP community. So it's a really nice community. And one of the nice things is that our members often are also members of other organizations such as ASA. So we have, as a component of our membership, a number of NASBP agencies that are also ASA members throughout the country as well.
Outstanding. Can you explain then also, just to lay foundation work here, what are surety bonds and why they're important to construction work?
Yeah, absolutely. So surety bonds are really to distill it down, they're three-party agreements, but they're essentially guarantees given by the surety insurer on behalf of a contractor or subcontractor, to an owner or a GC, that they're guaranteeing that party's performance and other obligations. So they're really more in the nature of an extension of credit, even though they're regulated as insurance. And the whole idea behind a surety bond is that it avoids a default in the first place, meaning that the surety goes through a process of pre-qualification of the companies that they're going to extend credit to. And if they decide that company really can perform, has the financial wherewithal, the management, the experience, and other criteria that they look at, then they extend credit in the form of those performance payment, warranty, and bid bonds, for example. And so it's a very important industry. We don't always think we're as known as we should be, but particularly any subcontractors and contractors doing commercial work, and in particular public construction work, really need to establish a surety line of credit to pursue that work. So it is important to those businesses, and the surety industry. They align their interest with their clients, their principals. So they're really interested in helping those companies grow over time. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through this.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, one of the very next thing to ask you about is how the NASBP's interests align with ASA.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about some of those on the risk environment. So everything from jointly participating in creation of standardized forms, whether it is subcontracts, general contracts, bond forms. Those are things that NASBP and ASA have done together, or at least in efforts where they were both present. But on top of that, advocacy has been one of those areas that we've really worked together for a number of years. Most recently, you had a fly-in, and actually Larry LeClaire, who is our director of government relations, participated in that fly-in as well, because there are a number of bills and issues that we share and are promoting and advocating for. Chief among them is a bill called HR 2726, and it really is dealing with change orders at the federal level. The title of that bill is the Small Business Payment for Performance Act of 2023. So both organizations, among others, are supporting the advancement of that bill in Congress. And what it would do, it would allow some interim payments for owner-directed change orders to the contractor and subcontractors, so that those parties don't wind up financing owner-directed work until late in the project or whatever. So it's a basic fairness bill that is going to advocate for payment to flow down more quickly than it would on change order work at the federal level. So we feel that as surety professionals like to say, cash is king, working capital is important, cash flow. Again, this is an effort where our interests align in making sure that there is adequate cash flow to those parties. And this is something we can both advocate for. Likewise, we are both advocating for HR 1740, which is another House bill that would make sure that it is clear that there are payment and performance protections on WIFIA funded work. So WIFIA is an acronym, and I'm sure I'll mess it up if I try to say the exact name, but it's essentially a federal program that provides grant funds for water infrastructure across the country.
Right.
And there are some instances where it may not be clear whether there are bond requirements in place. Well, this bill would make it clear that to the extent there are WIFIA funds involved in a water infrastructure project, the performance and payment bonds need to be involved. And those obviously are very important, particularly the payment bonds, protecting the downflow payment rights of subcontractors and suppliers. So those are examples at the federal level of, issues that we share that are important to both organizations and that we're really advocating hard for in this Congress. We realize that, nothing's easy in Congress, particularly these days.
Yeah, for sure.
So these are multi-year, probably multi-congressional cycle efforts, and we need every voice and every person with an interest in this advocating to move these along and make them laws. To that end, ASA and NASBP also were instrumental in encouraging the formation of the Construction Procurement Caucus in Congress to focus interest on issues such as these and get them in front of more members of Congress. Both groups also participate in a coalition of Construction Industry Procurement Coalition, and both ASA and NASBP are decided leaders in those coalitions, again, to kind of push construction issues forward for the benefit of all the stakeholders. So those are examples at the federal level. We also collaborate with ASA at state levels, whether it's to protect payment bond thresholds or to make sure that unregulated sureties aren't in the business of providing surety bonds in states and there's really nothing backing those bonds. Those are all examples of issues that over the years, ASA and NASBP have banded together to fight various state legislative measures.
So I know that Mike Oscar has spoken fondly about the relationship with NASBP, and clearly there's a strong link between the organizations that we both appreciate.
Right.
Yeah.
And Mike does a fabulous job. We're so pleased that we have him as a partner that we can work with. And he works very well with Larry Leclerc, our Director of Government Relations. So very much appreciative of his efforts.
Yeah.
I think some of the opportunities that we have in front of us between the organizations. So we mentioned advocacy, we mentioned bond forms and things like that, is also on the education front. And we realize that there's a lot of opportunities to be before stakeholders, and those stakeholders might be subcontractors, although a lot of times your members are very sophisticated when it comes to surety bonding, but they may be working with other businesses that are not, and they need to know resources that are available to help educate them on important issues. Sometimes you guys have those resources and we can borrow those. And likewise, sometimes we have resources like that. So one of the things that we've developed is a contractor bonding education and mentoring program. So it's a free online course. Any person can take it, and you can take it at your leisure, in your own time. You can access it through the NASBP website. But if they're working downstream with the company, and they don't know how to get bonded or what it involves or whatever, it's an easy way for them to get a really good orientation about what all's involved in qualifying for bonding. We're also looking at, other education initiatives where we might work with ASA on like what we call webinars or virtual seminars for the benefit of both our communities. And so we're looking at a variety of things there, but again, a lot of opportunities on that front.
Yeah. I want to note as well that your contractor education site is also linked through ASA's foundation site, our learning center. So anybody who wants to access it, you can easily go through the FASA site as well.
Yeah, thank you. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of keeping with the theme of education, how do subcontractors learn about, let's say they're new, and they want to find out about surety bonds? How do they learn about them? How do they find a surety bond producer? How do they know that this producer is a good one? How do they build these relationships?
Yeah, those are all great questions. So obviously I'd be remiss in saying, well, they certainly can go to the NASBP website, right, and look at our membership directory. Those are certainly firms that really focus on the surety bonding line of business, and they're specialists in that regard. But as I alluded to earlier, there are certainly a lot of very good bond producers, whether they're NASBP members or not, that are members of ASA. And the fact that their involvement with ASA, and if they're in the regular business of surety bonding, those are good indicators. You certainly want to look for firms and individuals that have what I call proven integrity, meaning they have a good reputation. I'm sure they can talk to other folks in the subcontractor community about their relationships with surety professionals and get those as leads. They can go onto NASBP. They can see who's active in the local ASA chapter meetings. Those are good indications. But it can't just be an agent who's primarily just an insurance agent. It needs to be an agent who really does focus on the surety bonding line of business, whose predominant services and focus is on that line. Certainly, they're going to know the surety marketplace better than somebody who just dabbles in it every year or a couple of years or whatever, because like anything else, the surety marketplace is dynamic. It changes. There are different players coming in and out. Their appetites change for the kinds of business that they want to write. So you really want somebody who makes it their focus to be in surety bonding. There are also things that you can look for in qualifications for surety agents. So there's a credential called AFSB, Associated Surety and Fidelity Bonding. So that's a credential that a surety professional can achieve. It is through the Institutes, which is a nonprofit insurance organization. And so not all very qualified surety professionals have that designation, but if they do, that is kind of an indicator that they've gone through, taken the time and made the commitment to get that credential. I think the other thing that's really important for subcontractors to know when they're looking for a surety professional relationship is how proficient is that agent in understanding the construction business and particularly the financial side of the construction business. Do they really understand what's involved in that? Again, there is a credential out there. It's kind of fairly new in the surety space, so there may not be as many surety agents out there with it. But certainly, if they have it, it's an indication that they've worked very hard to really understand construction financial accounting. It's called CCIFP, and it's through the Construction Financial Management Association.
Okay.
And like I said, there are many qualified bond producers out there who may not have that. But again, if somebody sees that credential, they can be assured that that person really is focused on the kinds of accounting issues that they're going to face as a construction business. So those certainly are things to do. And then also just to understand their kind of broad business knowledge of the agent. So what other things can they bring as a trusted advisor to the subcontractor's business? So, are they focused on their succession planning? What kind of professional service provider network have they built? Do they have the names of construction-oriented CPAs, construction attorneys, and others that really can make a difference for the subcontractor? So those are some of the things that I think they should be looking at as they're choosing a surety professional relationship.
I mean, clearly there's a lot. Does your organization provide credentialing as well?
We don't, and we do support both the credentials that I mentioned, both through the Institute, the AFSP, and the CCIFP through CFMA. And like I said, those are good indicators. There's certainly a lot of qualified bond producers who may not have those credentials, but show their expertise every day through their client portfolio, through their involvement in ASA and other groups, and just through that long time knowledge that they've gleaned by focusing mainly on the surety bonding line of business. So,
okay. So circling back to education for a second, you mentioned before and I forget what you called it, but it's basically your contractor education platform. Can subcontractors go there and gain a greater understanding of the surety bonding relationship and processes? Is that part of the curriculum?
Yes, absolutely. So we have a learning portal. We call it Surety Learn, and there's actually components of it that is Surety Learn for contractors and subcontractors. I mentioned one aspect of that, which is that online orientation course, but we have a wealth of other resources there that subcontractors might be interested in, as well as archived. We call our webinars virtual seminars, and they're recorded, and there's a whole host of issues that have been addressed through that they can go to. We have white papers and other resources that they can access. The virtual seminars, we do charge for them, but we did work out a discount for ASA members so that they can access the same resources that NASBP members can access at the NASBP member price. So there is no difference between the NASBP member price and the discount given to ASA members. So that's something, again, because we have a close working relationship, we were very pleased to do.
Yeah, much appreciated too. We love our discounts, so it's great that you guys can offer that. Let's switch gears a little bit to trends in the industry, and what current trends or challenges do you see in the surety bond industry that subcontractors should be aware of?
So I like to say there's always challenges and opportunities. Right? So the surety industries had a number of, I think, strong years. That's notable because then that means that I think there is good capacity out there, and will remain so. You've also had a lot of new entrants into the surety market space. So there are a lot of companies out there, and it's been an attractive marketplace for PNC insurers to come in, but you also have very established companies. So there are a lot of markets out there who can serve the subcontractor community. So that's certainly the good news. I think, unfortunately, we're starting to see a little bit of an uptick in claims frequency and severity. And when I say claim severity, part of that has been as a result of factors that I think the whole construction community is having to deal with. So, for example, material price escalation, inflation, workforce shortages, that has meant that there has been some losses, and those losses have been probably more in the smaller contractor space, but they are occurring. That does tend to tighten things from like a reinsurance perspective. And so there may be a little bit more scrutiny on smaller firms as they're qualifying for surety credit, but there's certainly a lot of markets. And so they just have to be aware of that and make sure that they're working with their bond agent to put their best foot forward and make sure that they have that surety credit that they need as they go and pursue their business opportunities. But there are a number of surety carriers out there. There are a number of programs. There are various programs out there, everything from qualifying basically primarily on credit all the way up to the traditional programs. So there's a lot of opportunities for quality companies to get surety bonding and surety bonding capacity.
Okay, thank you. Next question then, what are some of the common misconceptions about surety bonds that should be clarified?
Yeah, so the one that probably drives me the most crazy is when you have owners and sometimes general contractors view a surety bond as just like another insurance policy, not really understanding that it is more in the nature of a credit instrument, and that it just doesn't pay out if there's an occurrence. There really has to be a default, and that default needs to be essentially, because it was a problem associated with the bonded principal. So the surety doesn't step in unless it's justified. And it's very important, that subcontractors, for subcontractors, that the surety is doing a careful investigation of whether or not they need to respond. And so, particularly when owners think that the bond should pay for everything for any reason, that's certainly a dangerous thought. And they really are misconstruing what the bond is there for, which is it's a secondary guarantee that the surety will step up into the shoes of the subcontractor if the subcontractor is at fault and defaults. Apart from that, there is not an obligation for the surety to respond. So, we start to see sometimes owners and then in turn GCs write bond language into the bonds where there doesn't even have to be a trigger for the subcontract to be, have a claim against it. And that's when the surety professionals and the subcontractors really need to do education and to blunt that transfer of risk that is unwarranted.
Are there differences then for small, medium, and large subcontractors in the surety bond market?
There are certainly different surety programs and different appetites by sureties for those. There's certainly programs at every level available. Um, you know, differences might be based on sophistication and working capital. And so you can have relative appetites by sureties on that. So, you know, subcontractors need to make sure that they are, keeping the money in their business, maintaining adequate working capital, staying on top of their cash flow, making sure that they're doing what they need to do to make sure their business is successful. That's when they really need to partner with their surety producer to help them ensure that, and also good construction CPA. It may be more difficult sometimes for smaller contractors or later finishing subcontractors, on the cash flow front. And I know that's an issue where NASBP and ASA have collaborated on the reduction in retainage amounts that you see around the country, particularly in public work at state and federal levels. We certainly have supported ASA efforts to reduce retainage amounts and what I call it, make it more judicious and fair to promote that good cash flow and the payments, because that ultimately is going to benefit subcontractors at every level in maintaining their surety bonding and growing as a business.
Okay. So let's talk about, before we talked about building relationships between subcontractors and the surety bond producers. Is there any specific advice that you would give to subcontractors who are new to the bonding process and looking to establish their first relationship with a producer?
Sure. Again, I think it boils down to finding the right person to work with, and going through and making sure that they have an experienced surety bond professional, surety bond agent to work with. That person is going to be their primary guide through the process. And you have to remember that, that person does not get paid, does not, get their commission unless they're successful in making their client qualify for surety credit. So they have a strong interest in doing whatever they can to position that firm to meet surety underwriting criteria. A lot of it is, making sure that they have the formal processes in place, the back office processes, that they have good financial accounting software and systems in place, that they are using written contracts, not handshakes, stuff that we talk about from a risk management perspective all the time. But it really is important, particularly as they go to qualify for surety credit. The other thing is the business plan, that they've articulated and updated a business plan showing what they want to achieve, how they're going to achieve it, and what their near-term goals are. Certainly, if they don't have that, that is something that the bond producer can help them build and give feedback. And then the other thing is that the bond producer, it can be a gateway for really good referrals to, as we talked about earlier, the experienced construction attorney, the experienced construction-oriented CPA, because those folks are also going to be critical with the bond producer to move that business principle towards achieving surety credit.
So even if you're a little bit more than just, a couple of guys selling construction services out of the back of a pickup truck, it sounds like the surety bond producers and that team of professionals can help move them down the road to being a pretty sound business.
Yeah, absolutely. They're going to be almost like their board of advisors, their trusted advisors, helping guide them. Everybody is in their camp because they want that principal to be successful and that principal's business to be successful. So they're really critical folks.
Excellent. That's a good, fantastic resource to have, I would think, especially for new businesses who are just getting into the game. That's
Right.
fantastic. Looking back a little bit in history, I know that everybody was impacted by COVID-19 and the pandemic. How did that affect the surety bond industry? And are there any lasting changes from that era that you foresee having impact going forward?
Yeah, I think one of the most telling impacts was so we went from a highly paper intensive
Yeah,
business to realizing, where you needed to be in front of somebody, getting a wedding signature and collaborating closely, to all of a sudden during the pandemic, nobody could be in front of each other in person, right? So how do you maintain a paper intensive process when you can't be together? So that was something that really hit the surety industry hard during those days, trying to figure out how to execute and distribute the bonds that were needed to keep going. And so the impact has been that the surety industry now is looking, they were looking to do this beforehand, but the pandemic really sped up the efforts by the industry at large and individual companies in particular to look at how to automate and digitize. So we're definitely seeing more efforts to do that. We're seeing a desire to be more efficient in processes by employing and leveraging technology. So that's everything from DocuSign. So now you're seeing
right.
digital signatures on general indemnity agreements that the principal may sign, to the actual bond forms themselves. And we're also, having to go through and conduct a lot of education of obligees and others, the owners, the GCs, that, a digital bond may even be more in their interest because it might be more secure, more efficient, and that they should consider accepting digital bonds. There are a number of industry efforts underway to see how blockchain technology can facilitate that step forward to a more digital world. And so that to me is tremendously exciting. The pandemic really gave a hard push for the industry to go in that direction, and now we're making those taking those steps.
So it's been, I mean, yeah, it's been huge. The whole world had to shift gears and digitize and automate. It's interesting. It seems no sector was left untouched.
Right. You see it now more like with things like license bonds. So subcontractors may be seeing that depending on the jurisdiction, that they may be able to do or get a license bond digitally or electronically. So it's small baby steps. The one challenge is that, construction owners and and think about all the procuring agencies. It's a real fragmented world, and it's hard to convince the ultimate beneficiary to move in this direction. So it's gonna take all of us, including ASA members, to advocate to move in this direction. And so again, another issue that we can work collaboratively on.
Right. And sticking with the AI or the technology theme for a second, and I played my hand a little there. Are you seeing any effects of AI like everybody else is?
So yes, the industry is certainly looking at how AI can make things more efficient in the surety space. Each company, I think, is evaluating it for themselves. The industry itself is looking at it from a policy standpoint. I think the general kind of thought process is like, well, there is a lot of data in the construction sector. And certainly there's a lot of data that's collected in the underwriting process. And can AI be used to help us kind of crunch that data and understand it better, and also do trend analysis so that the underwriting can be more efficient? But it's really not going to replace underwriters and bond producers per se, because we like to think we're in a relationship business ultimately. The grist for that is looking at data, looking at financial performance and ratios and all kinds of things. But at the end of the day, it's a relationship business, and AI is not going to replace relationships. But what it might do is help facilitate and make more efficient some of the processes that currently are manual now.
Yeah, no, I could see that completely. The other thing I would say, one of the areas where construction is insulated from AI is, AI can't hold a hammer or a wrench or,
Right.
those other things. So there's good and bad to it all, but I think it's going to make a lot of jobs more efficient for sure.
Right.
So
And it's you'll see, or at least what I've heard in terms of the construction context is, well, maybe AI can help with supply chain issues and
Right.
other things where it can anticipate, or even maintenance, and certainly in the design side, doing things and alleviating or foreseeing problems so they don't arise. So that will be interesting to see how all that plays out.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any sectors within construction where you see increasing demand for surety bonds?
So, there's been all of a sudden, I think, a lot of opportunities arise that perhaps weren't quite there in the last 3 or 4 years. Some of that has come by way of some of the federal legislation, with the infrastructure, focusing on renewable energy, on EV and so forth. So all of a sudden, and then also the push to get broadband out into rural areas. So one of the nice things that we've seen is that at least in terms of broadband, the Department of Commerce has probably the largest grant program, where they provide funding to the states for grants to build out broadband infrastructure and rural and underserved areas. I think they have about $42.5 billion that they're going to issue in grants to the states. And a lot of that is to build out rural broadband infrastructure. So the only security that they were contemplating at one point was the use of letters of credit, so that somebody who's being hired by the ISP or the ISP itself, in order to secure the performance of the broadband infrastructure build out, they would want a letter of credit. Well, first of all, that doesn't cover necessarily the build out of the system itself. It may just cover a small financial component of that. It certainly doesn't provide any pre-qualification of the entities receiving the grant. And it has the intended or unintended consequence of tying up working capital to the grant recipients. So also the bank credit quality in terms of wanting to issue letters of credit generally is not as pronounced as it once was. So for all those reasons, the Department of Commerce, and they have a sub-agency underneath the Department of Commerce, NTIA. It's the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, or hopefully I got that correct. Right. But they're administering it, and they realize that, maybe we need to consider other forms of security, including performance bonds for that. And so NTIA in last November recently issued a programmatic waiver of letters of credit to also permit the use of performance bonds. And the surety industry, us working with the Surety and Fidelity Association of America, formed a working group to come up with bond forms that could be used in that space. So that's a new market. We'll see as the states now are receiving the grant funds or building out their own programs. There is a information kit that NASBP and SFA have created so that they can understand how to use bonds and what types of bond forms would be appropriate. So we'll see how that goes. We certainly think it's a step in the right direction to start thinking about surety bonds with broadband infrastructure. We're also seeing surety bonds at play for renewable energy. So now you're seeing whether it's at the state level or even local levels, everything from solar and wind turbines or the construction of EV stations, things like that, that sometimes they're calling for surety bonds as a component of the security for those projects. So those are all certainly kind of what I call newer pathways for surety. And then you always do see all of a sudden things pop up that you wouldn't expect, sometimes good, sometimes bad. But in the main, I think these are really good opportunities for the industry. And then also stakeholders in general.
Excellent. Yeah, that's good. I mean, it keeps you growing, right? It keeps keeps things moving.
Well, and it's also, then like you said, so if you have smaller companies that are working or wanting to qualify for the grants or to do the actual construction work, and they're being forced to do a letter of credit, well, that's tying up working capital. Right. Or the bond itself may not do that. So to the extent that a federal agency or a state agency will accept a surety bond as the preferred security, then that allows, I think, more businesses to participate in that kind of activity.
Good. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Last couple questions here. So we're coming towards the end. Are there any upcoming legislative or regulatory changes that might impact surety bonding for contractors or subcontractors?
So I'm just going to go back to the broadband thing, so that was a regulatory effort that NTIA, Department of Commerce, did. There are other broadband programs out there. So the FCC has one, the Department of Agriculture has another. They're not, in terms of their funding, they're not as big, but they still have billions of dollars that they're pushing down for broadband infrastructure. So with NTIA allowing bonds to come in and be used, we are hopeful, and we are going out there and writing our comment letters to FCC and the Department of Ag, that these other federal agencies will entertain, surety bonds as an alternative to letters of credit. So certainly that's an effort that is underway, will continue to be underway at the regulatory, level. In terms of, we talked a little bit about federal legislation that is important to both groups.
Okay, so following up after our little Xfinity snafu there, we'll go ahead and finish wrapping up the interview here. The last question I do have for you is, how does NASBP support its members in staying current with industry best practices and regulations?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of our core, functions as a trade association. So we handle it in a variety of ways. I mean, first and foremost is professional development. We talked a lot about education. So we have surety schools. We have a variety of distance learning opportunities. All those things are, as I call, to educate and raise the professionalism of our members. I should also say that NASBP members, they sign off on our code of ethics when they join. And that's, what they're expected to adhere to that code of ethics. So certainly that's something that I think sets them apart. but they do make that commitment to the organization. There is the professional development strain. We also do expect them to be active. So many of them participate on committees. We have committees focused on a lot of different areas, from commercial surety, small and emerging business, industry relations, all sorts of interest areas that are important. And also our networking events. I think when they go to an NASBP meeting, they are amongst their peers. They are trading information about what they do and how they do it. And that helps, I think, the overall industry. We as I said, we do support credentialing that other organization puts on. And those certainly are also things that kind of raise the professionalism and the bar for NASBP members.
Yeah, no, I think that is, obviously you guys are doing a lot for the surety bond industry, as well as, the collaboration with ASA. It seems like a good match and a good partnership. So we're happy to have you. And I want to thank you for joining me today, and providing your answers to a long list of questions. So I do appreciate it. Is there any final words you want to leave the listeners with?
Yeah, just that one, we are very appreciative of the relationship that we do have with ASA. It is a long-term relationship that I think has been beneficial to both organizations. But we continue to find other areas to collaborate. And, it is something that I think is so important as an industry that, the various stakeholder groups work closely together. We have so much more in common than not. And like any industry, we all need to be working together to make sure that we're heard and that the construction industry's concerns are at the highest level, so that we can benefit the industry. But the industry itself benefits this country in so many ways, and it's so important, and it supplies such a great quality of life for those in it. It's a real pleasure to be an advocate for the industry and to work with ASA.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I will say, just to add to that, our voices are louder when they're together.
Yeah.
And I think that's why there's so much power in the relationship that we have with y'all. So it really is good. Just for anybody who's interested, if you want to learn more about NASBP, the website is nasbp.org. And then, of course, ASA's is asaonline.com. So you're welcome to visit there. Mark, thank you again for your time today. And we appreciate you as always.
Yeah, thank you, Mike.
All right, have a great day. Thank you for listening to the ASA podcast. For more subcontractor-focused content, visit us at asaonline.com and fastcares.org. You can also follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube.